name is Madison Wilson. Welcome to my TED Talk. Let me tell you the story of an epic journey led by a quick-witted, cunning, ambitious, and brave individual who would risk anything to get back to his home to see his family again. It all started when he led his crew through challenging obstacles such as escaping the clutches of delusional cults, saving each other from a deadly interaction with a one-eyed being, and resisting the lure of devious women. Despite the arguments and many flaws, the leader and crew were loyal to one another and stayed together. This was done all while being chased by a powerful being who was intent on killing them in order to achieve justice. While this man and his crew were risking their lives to get back home, his home life was falling apart. His offspring believed him dead, and his wife was set to marry another, so he must act quick to get home, all before his life falls apart. Does this all sound a bit familiar to you? Now, what if I said to you that this is the storyline not only to the infamous epic poem, The Odyssey, but the storyline to O Brother, Where Art Thou? Today, I will be discussing Odysseus' heroic battle in comparison to the comedy film, O Brother, Where Art Thou, that depicts a prisoner's escape story. Despite having similar values, motivations, characteristics, and storylines, Odysseus, the protagonist of the Odyssey, and Ulysses Everett McGill, the protagonist of O Brother, Where Art Thou, are viewed as opposites of each other. That is, Everett is a greedy criminal, and Odysseus is a Greek hero. These prejudices that society holds against these characters shape the decisions they make as they embark on their quest. Despite each of them being deeply flawed characters who make mistakes in their own journeys, each of them is forgiven and are viewed as heroes by those around them. Now, I know you have a lot of questions like, why are these stories so similar? How come these characters were seen so differently by their peers? How did the quest that each of them went on shape them into heroes? Are they still considered heroes today? I will answer these questions in two parts. Part 1, context, and Part 2, character. To understand these questions, let's delve into Part 1, context, and explain in more depth what these texts really are and what the context was. The Odyssey. The Odyssey starts with Odysseus' family, who wait at home in Ithaca for his arrival. It's been almost 20 years since the Trojan War, and Telemachus, Odysseus' son, and Penelope, Odysseus' wife, don't even know if Odysseus is still alive. Over 100 suitors are staying at Odysseus' palace in hopes of marrying Penelope and ruling Ithaca. Telemachus is only just coming of age and doesn't know how to fend them off, so with the help of the goddess Athena, he travels to Sparta, hopeful to find news about his father. The poem then changes point of view. Odysseus is trapped on an island with a nymph called Calypso, and he has been there for 7 years, sleeping with her while also missing his home. Hermes, the messenger god, tells Calypso to let him go, and Odysseus is on his way home until the sea god Poseidon crashes his ship and strands him. Poseidon is angry at Odysseus for blinding his Cyclops son, Polyphemus, and is intent on making his life more difficult. It's there Odysseus finds the Phoenicians who ask them to tell his story, so Odysseus tells them. He and his men, after leaving the Trojan War, unsuccessfully raided a city, got trapped with hypnotized people, barely escaped the land of Cyclopses, stays with a wind god, and almost gets home, but is swept away by winds to the cannibalistic Laestrygonians. His men get turned into pigs by Circe the Enchantress. He then stays with Circe for a year, sleeping with her before going to the land of the dead to receive a prophecy. He and his men then barely survive sirens and a 6-headed monster called Scylla. Then they arrive at the island of the sun god Helios. There, his men eat the forbidden cattle and Zeus killed them all, while Odysseus was swept away to stay with Calypso. The Phoenicians take pity on Odysseus and sail him to Ithaca, where he and Telemachus are reunited. Then, to test Penelope's faithfulness, Odysseus dresses as a beggar and joins the suitors in a contest for Penelope, where he wins. He then kills all the suitors with Telemachus, and they all live happily ever after. A Brother, Where Art Thou starts with Ulysses Everett McGill, Pete Hogwallop, and Delmar O'Donnell escaping prison in pursuit after $1.2 million that Everett stashed away. He told the others that the place where he hid it was about to get flooded, so they needed to head there right away. On the run from the law, they stumble across a large group of people singing in a lake and getting baptized. Pete and Delmar get baptized while Everett refuses, as he isn't religious. They then come across Tommy Johnson, who has sold his soul to the devil in exchange to play the guitar really well. The four of them go and record a song as the Soggy Bottom Boys to get paid. After getting paid, Tommy goes his separate way. Pete goes missing after the three of them are lured in by sirens. Delmar believes he was turned into a toad, whereas Everett believes him dead. After gaining money from a bank robbery, Everett and Delmar go to eat in a fancy restaurant where they meet the one-eyed Big T, who beats and robs them. Now, with no money, the two of them make their way into a town where Everett sees three of his children, who believed him dead. Everett tracks down their mother, his wife, Penelope, and begs them to be together again after he finds out she is getting married to another man. Penelope's new fiancé ends up fighting him. After being rejected, Everett and Delmar see a movie and are then reunited with Pete. It is then that Everett reveals there is no money, and the whole time he was trying to get home to be with his wife. After an already strained relationship, this pushes Pete over the edge and he starts fighting Everett. They stumble upon a Ku Klux Klan meeting to see Tommy about to be lynched. They put their differences aside and dress up like Ku Klux Klan members to save Tommy. With Tommy now in their group, the Soggy Bottom Boys go back into town and disguise themselves to perform at a campaign dinner. While they were on the run, the Soggy Bottom Boys' recording become massively popular, and the attendees at the dinner cheer wildly for their music act. The Soggy Bottom Boys ends up getting their crimes pardoned. Everett convinces Penny to marry him again, but only if he goes to their cabin and retrieves her old wedding ring. When they arrive, there is a lawman there waiting for them, with nooses hanging from the tree. He plans to hang the boys. For the first time, Everett begins to pray for forgiveness and help. Within seconds, we see water trickling onto the soil. A tsunami of water floods the area, and the boys are swept away and saved from execution. Everett is convinced there is scientific reason to all of this. He then finds his old desk floating in the water and brings Penny back her ring. Now that we are all caught up with the storyline, let me address the first part of the question, which is, why are these stories so similar, and how is Odysseus' story still relevant enough to be compared to a modern-day comedy film? The answer to this is the 12-stage storyline, called The Hero's Journey. The Hero's Journey is a classic story structure that's shared by stories worldwide. Coined by academic Joseph Campbell in 1949, it refers to a wide-ranging category of tales in which a character ventures out to get what they need, faces conflict, and ultimately triumphs over adversity. The hero's journey follows this structure. The reason that this structure is so relevant 70 years later is because we all face daily struggles and journeys that allow us to relate to the hero's storyline. Not only that, but this storyline archetype provides a platform for the new idea of a hero and what their journey will entail according to the time frame. Our idea of the hero, aka a role model for society, changes according to our values and morals. The Odyssey and Oh Brother, Where Art Thou as texts both fit into this story structure, which means that according to their time frames, values, and morals, they were heroes. The context and values of the Odyssey. The Odyssey was set in the Bronze Age and written in the Iron Age, so the social structure of the story and values that are reflected in the text were that of the Iron Age. This form of social structure is apparent in the household. Hospitality and a stable household were of the utmost importance, which is the reason why Odysseus was so eager to get home. Hospitality is a social custom common to nearly all pre-modern societies and essential to ancient Greek social structure. Hospitality was a social ritual expected of men in the Greek world. Under the rules of hospitality, men would be expected to host visitors, providing them with food, a bath, and anything else that they may have needed. In return, guests would be expected to pose no threat to the life or property of their host, and to return the favor if their host should turn up at their homes in the future. Another important value to note in the Odyssey is the lack of respect for women and the double standards surrounding faithfulness. In the poem, it was expected that Penelope stay faithful to Odysseus for 20 years, even though she did not know if he was alive. However, Odysseus was extremely unfaithful. When he comes home, Odysseus even disguises himself to make sure she had remained faithful even though he had not. The context and values of O Brother, Where Art Thou? O Brother, Where Art Thou was set in the south of the USA in Mississippi during the 1930s. In the 1930s, the USA was dealing with the Great Depression, the worst economic downturn in US history. This can be seen throughout the film as Everett's crew desperately want the so-called $1 million. In the Great Depression, throughout the USA, one of the only affordable pastimes was to listen to music. Music was very important to society at the time, as it was able to distract them from their woes and connect them with one another. This is why the Soggy Bottom Boys' song was so successful. The South was often known for its religious attitudes and racism, which explains much of the religious imagery throughout the film, such as the baptism scene, as well as the Ku Klux Klan scene. This leads us to part 2, character, which answers, how did the quests that each of them went on shape them into heroes? Are they still considered heroes today? To answer these questions, let's take a look at our actual characters and why they were heroes. Odysseus and Everett both have the same characteristics and similar personality. They were quick-witted, wise, smart, and charming. However, they were also too prideful, stubborn, argumentative, opinionated, and have a lack of self-control. Despite these similarities, the characters were perceived differently from the start of the story. Odysseus was a hero, and Everett was a criminal. Odysseus and Everett's context and perceived prejudices caused them to make the decisions that they did. Each character had been seen by everyone around them in a particular way due to the context of the time. Odysseus was considered a hero because he followed the values and context of the time so well. He came from a rich status, he was a war hero, the gods favoured him, aside from Poseidon, and he valued a stable home and hospitality. This preconceived idea that everyone had of him caused him to make the choices that he did, such as his mistake in ransacking a city just after the Trojan War, which backfired. This shows his overly ambitious quality. His pride and hubris caused Poseidon to hunt him down for almost his whole trip, as after blinding Polyphemus, his Cyclops son, he made sure he knew his name by taunting him with it. Despite his family being his main motivation to get back home, he sleeps with multiple women and almost marries Calypso. Regardless of these foolish actions, he is forgiven and is welcomed home as a hero. Everett was considered a criminal to begin with due to his opposition with these values. He was illegally requiring money for his family due to their poverty through the Great Depression, but he also isn't a religious person, a very unpopular characteristic of the time. It could also be argued that he was disliked by others due to his friendship with Tommy. This placing of Everett into a criminal box leads him to act how everyone expects him to act. He lies about the money to get what he wants. His prideful appearance caused the cops to track him and his crew down through the scent of Everett's regular hair gel, and his lack of self-control caused them to be tempted by the sirens, who turned Pete into authorities and was then tortured. However, it is also this criminal background that makes him realize that he can't win over his family this way. So he wins over the audience for us to see him as a hero, as he saves Tommy from death at the hands of the Ku Klux Klan. And he wins over his peers accidentally while trying to talk to his wife. He and his crew perform their song as the Soggy Bottom Boys, and as music connected everyone together in those dark days of the Depression, they were pardoned of their crimes. These preconceived ideas that others had about Odysseus and Everett caused them to act the way they did. Odysseus, the protagonist of the Odyssey, and Ulysses Everett McGill, the protagonist of O Brother, Where Art Thou, are extremely similar. Their storylines are similar, their characteristics are similar, and their motivations are similar. One of their most vital differences is their social status. Odysseus is a war hero, and Everett is a greedy criminal. Each of them, through their journeys, make mistakes, but are forgiven, and both considered heroes at the end. While they are considered heroes in their own respective stories, are they worthy to be considered heroes in this day? The answer is no. Only one could possibly be considered a hero today, which is Everett. Everett was able to stop a racist death and was able to prove himself worthy of the audience and his wife's approval. He gave himself up and proved himself to Penny, almost risking death to get her wedding ring. Odysseus, after being responsible for the death of his crew members and cheating, was welcomed back with open arms. And then he had the audacity to test his wife for her faithfulness. As seen in the above evidence, it is apparent that each character's social role in society led them to make the choices that they did throughout their journey. Therefore, the reason Everett became more of a hero was due to his criminal background.